Hello and welcome to the Discover History YouTube channel, and this afternoon I'm going to take a look at one of the bottles that is in our bottle collection. Now you're probably thinking collecting bottles is an unbelievably boring thing. However, when you look at how bottles have been manufactured over the years, you will actually start thinking again. Now, what I don't want to do is cover the whole of the history of bottle making, but I do need to give a little bit of an overview first to then introduce you to the famous cod bottle. What I will point out to you straight away is the fact that the term cod bottle does not refer to cod as in the fish. In other words, it's not spelt C-O-D. It's actually spelt C-O-D-D, and that's really down to the fact that the inventor was a man called Mr. Cod, but that's in the Victorian period. So before that, just to set the scene, but like I said, in less than 15 minutes, we're not going to go into detail about the history of bottles and their manufacturing. We're just going to cover an overview in a way to drip feed you a bit of information to spark your imagination to find out some more yourself. So if you think about it, we've needed containers to store stuff in for a very, very long time. The first proper jars, for example, the first containers as such really was around about the end of the Stone Age, so the Neolithic, and definitely into the Bronze Age, and that's when we were producing more and we were needing to store it. And obviously people like the Romans took it another stage further and produced all sorts of bottles, jars and all sorts of things. I've actually got one here. This is an original one which I have spoken about before, and this is an original Roman jug. And this was gifted to me by an archaeologist that I know who purchased it many, many years ago. It's a fantastic Roman jug. Absolutely brilliant. And that's the sort of thing people were using for centuries, really. The most famous of those being the amphora, the ones that are conical shaped, really, and that enables them to be stacked on board ships and even sunk into the ground when they go to special shops to be sold. But then really we carried on with that. We started to create all sorts of jars, and obviously within archaeology we do find what's left of their broken jars, and in some cases ones that are not broken, like that one there. But then by the Victorian period, because glass was becoming much cheaper, most of the drinks, for example, were kept in bottles, and bottles come in many types. Not all of them are actually glass. Some of them are actually made out of earthenware as well, and you'll see a lot of earthenware gin bottles, for example. But this one is a glass bottle, a standard typical old type of bottle, really. They were relatively thick, often in a greeny colour or even in a brown colour, and because they were made technically in making use of moulds and things like that, they could also have not a label but an actual name printed or moulded into the glass. In this case, this one says Dudfield, and at the bottom it says Worcester. Obviously, because we're based in Worcester, we have a massive interest in Worcester. We do collect bottles, jars and things like that with Worcester on. We do actually have quite a collection of bottles, but that's one from one manufacturer, Dudfield. We've got ones for Spreckley's and all sorts, the old beer makers, for example, in Worcester. But then in 1872, Henry Cod was actually looking, and he was based in London, he was looking at different types of bottles and how they can be used specifically with carbonated drinks. In other words, drinks with a carbon dioxide in. What we would now call really a fizzy drink, and this included all sorts of things like mineral waters, for example. And he needed something that would create a seal and would hold a seal to keep the drink specifically very, very fresh. And what he actually came up with was what later became termed the cod bottle. And you've probably seen them before. They are very stereotypical of Victorian bottles from the 1870s, and not saying that everything went into bottles like this, because obviously these style of bottles are still in use today, but this great invention was a way of keeping carbonated drinks pretty fresh. It kept them sealed in under pressure. And what it actually meant is designing a bottle which was pinched in high up on the neck of the bottle, and you can probably see that just there. So you can see the bottle and you will see something moving around in there. When I hold it sideways on, you will see it's a very unusual shape as well. Some people will actually tell you that it's called a cod bottle because it resembles a fish, and therefore you've got the nose at this end, the eye there, and then obviously the body of the fish going in that way. It's a nice thought really, but it's technically known as a cod bottle purely because of the manufacturer, the man who came up with the idea. So it's a British idea, and what you end up having to do is creating a bottle that is unbelievably thick. And I don't know if you can see that from there, but if you look at the bottom, they are very, very thick, and that's because this is holding a carbonated drink, so there's going to be a lot of pressure inside that bottle. And if you think of some of the early glassware, even into the 16th century, it was relatively thin and it would not take that pressure, so it had to be thick. So they were manufactured pretty thick, and you have this special design in there. Now, something that you might see rolling around in there, and you can definitely hear it rolling around in there, was a glass marble. And what Cod came up with is a few different patents really. In the top of the bottle there, you've actually got a groove that runs around the inside. Hopefully you can see that on there. There's a little groove. That would hold a seal, and some of the early ones are made out of all sorts of things, but rubber was the most common thing, and that would be pressed inside that little glass lip in the top there. And then what would happen is the marble would loosely rattle around in the bottle when it's empty, and then when they're ready to be filled, they were always filled in that position there. So they were actually filled upside down, which sounds absolutely mad, but remember, this is a carbonated drink, so the carbonated drink would be fired into the bottle there, and because there is carbon dioxide in it, it's building up the pressure there, and it will actually force the marble against the rubber seal, and therefore that bottle would now hold nice and fresh the carbonated drink. Now this one is actually one from Spreckley's. I don't know if you can see that on there. Spreckley's of Worcester, which was quite a famous brewery in its day. So that would hold the carbonated drink, and when you were ready to use it, you would actually open it. Some people say all you need to do is push down on the marble and it lets the pressure out and allows you to pour the drink. There are in existence some special openers that are available as well, and they look like a flat disc with a spike in the middle, not a sharp spike, but just a spike, a piece coming down, and the idea is you press it on the top like that, and it lets the pressure out and forces the marble into the bottom. But you don't want the marble to fall right to the bottom because you want to be able to repressurize it. And the way it sits in this special hole there, which resembles the eye of the codfish, was designed so you can still pour out the drink without the bottle getting stopped with the marble. It's very, very clever. A very, very clever device for basically a bit of disposable glassware basically. It is said that if you do want to create the pressure again, it is said that you can shake it around a lot, turn it upside down very quickly and shake it, and then the pressure would build up and the seal would be created again. Not very good, to be fair, for doing that, but it's a fantastic idea created by a man down in London initially. This became very common across Britain in the Victorian time for holding carbonated drinks, and I think it's absolutely fantastic, which is why I've decided to make a short video today just talking about a cod bottle. Next question: is there anyone out there that actually collect bottles? Because I find them fascinating, especially in the different colours that you can get them, and likewise it's quite interesting to do some research on the company names as well. If you do collect bottles, some people do actually dig for them in old bottle dumps, but I will warn you, if you are digging in old bottle dumps, if you know where they are, be very, very careful, because they're notorious for having voids. In other words, because of the way the bottles have all been thrown in, and some of them are broken over the years, some of them have actually been undermined by badgers and all sorts of things. Sometimes you could be digging away through a lot of bottles that you're digging out and going to wash and put on display. The problem is you can have a void under them sometimes, and you can end up falling down quite a deep hole. So it is quite a dangerous activity if you are going to dig on old bottle dumps. But bottles are quite an interesting thing. In a way, all our ancestors from the Bronze Age onwards ended up with items of rubbish now, if you think about it, broken jars, broken bottles and that sort of thing. And the Victorian ones, the glass ones, are around for a very, very long time. Another word of warning, glass can actually deteriorate over time, and eventually glass actually goes iridescent, so it starts to look like a pearl, and then it starts to flake, and it can get very, very dangerous if you're handling old bottles that are starting to deteriorate. This one has obviously been well looked after, and possibly been used for other things after its intended purpose. But I will say children like to break these years ago, and the main reason for breaking these was to actually get the marble out, because a lot of street children in particular didn't have the money to afford glass marbles, but obviously these had a marble fitted inside. I do actually have a cod bottle as well, which has still got the seal in it, but it's no longer in position. It's actually down in the base, which is another quite interesting fact about the cod bottle. So the cod bottle is what today's video was on, and hopefully that spurred your interest really in what is technically a disposable container for a carbonated drink, but it's an historic thing. And as I always say, everything in history, everything in the past has a tale to tell. The cod bottle. Anyway, on that note, stay safe, stay in, and have a fantastic weekend. See you tomorrow. Bye.